Computer Programming Essentials Unit 7, Part 3. So when we're using loops, there's sometimes some things we want to do, such as if we want to calculate the average of age of everyone in class, we have to add them all together, add everyone's age together, and then divide by the total number of people in class. That's calculating a simple average. We call that counting if we want to add up how many people are in class. We call it accumulating if we want to get a sum of their ages. So counting and accumulating are two key terms that you need to know. Counting is counting how many are there, 1, 2, 3. Accumulating is calculating a sum of something, what the total is. Java provides some shortcut operators for incrementing and accumulating, for counting and accumulating. And they are plus equals, minus equals, multiply equals, divide equals, and modulus equals. So instead of saying, you may recall from a previous unit or part that we had loop count equals loop count plus 1. We could accomplish the exact same thing by saying loop count plus equals 1. That's the same as saying loop count equals loop count plus 1. We could also add 1 to a value by using the increment or increment operators. There is a prefix increment operator and a postfix increment operator. So let's assume we have an integer variable named some value. We can add 1 to it by saying plus plus some value. We can also add 1 to it by saying some value plus plus. They're used only with integer variables, and they are unary operators. That means that they are operators that require only one operand. You increase a variable's value by 1, no difference between the operators unless the operations are in the same expression. We'll talk about what that means in a little bit. But the prefix and the postfix both add 1 to an integer variable. So if we have an integer variable called value, and we set value equal to 24, we can change that to 25 by saying plus plus value. Let's assume we reset value to 24. We can make that 25 by saying value plus plus. Let's assume we reset value to 24. We can make it 25 by saying value equals value plus 1. Let's assume we reset value to 24. We can make it 25 by saying value plus equals 1. So those are 4 different ways to add 1 to the variable value. The increment operator, there is a postfix and the prefix version. We will go over that in class. And there is also a decrement operator. Minus minus does the same as plus plus, but instead of adding 1, it subtracts 1. Here's an example. Let's assume we have an integer variable called myNumber and an integer variable called answer. If we set myNumber equal to 17, you know what? The best thing to do right now is hit the pause button and type up this little program and examine the output. See what it does. This will give you a really good feel for the difference between the prefix and the postfix increment operator. So I encourage you just right now, hit the pause button and create this program and run it and examine the results. Welcome back. I hope you did take time to run the program on the previous page. I'd like to talk to you about the for loop. The for loop is a special loop that is designed specifically to be a count-controlled loop. It is a definite loop, and you use a for loop when you know specifically how many times you want to loop. I enjoy the for loop because it includes both the initialization, the test, and the increment all in one place. Here's an example. For val equals 1, that's the initialization. Notice the semicolon. Val less than 11, that's the test. Notice the semicolon. Plus plus val, that's the increment. So all 3 of those, initialize, test, increment, or update, are included in the loop header. And then that loop goes ahead and prints out the value of the loop control variable, system.out.println val. We could do the same thing with a while loop, val equals 1, while val less than 11, system.out.println val, plus plus val. We do the exact same thing. So we really don't ever need a for loop, but it is super handy, and it's my favorite. So I encourage you to try using a for loop when you can. You can place more than one initialization in the initialization section and separate them by commas. You can have a compound test expression, and you can have more than one update. I encourage you to keep it simple and have one loop control variable that you initialize, test, and update. It is also possible to have no body with your loop control, with your for loop, and that's by putting a semicolon at the end, as you see here in this example. In this particular example, they're showing you how you can pause a program by having a loop that does absolutely nothing but increments. I don't encourage you to do this. I encourage you to use the built-in sleep method instead, because it's more descriptive than having a loop that just loops and does nothing. And you don't really ever know how fast the processor is on the machine that you're running, and so it won't sleep for a specific period of time the same that a sleep method will.